Testing. Hey Tim, let me switch over to my camera for a minute. All right. Hey Tim, is everything coming out blurry? All right, so if I broadcast the screen, I mean, can you guys see the screen, or is it all funky and chopped up? So all of this, none of this is legible over here on the left then, I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm working on a Santa beard right now. I haven't shaved or anything. I gotta get my, I gotta get this thing to be clear. Stand by a second, let me see if I can adjust the settings. You know, this last minute stuff is killing me. Come on, Rainey. Okay, I use it enough to know that people do not where you want it clear. Yeah, I want it clear. Hey Jeff, hey everybody. I'm gonna end up posting a new link in the Facebook group to a new feed. This last minute stuff is killing me. Bear with me a second. I'm gonna see if I can get this window to activate back up if I stop streaming for a minute. Hold on a second. Not much clearer, huh? You guys still with me? All right, stand by. Now I think I can just go ahead and do my edits in here and stuff. Let me just see if I can get everything cleaned up. Hold on, guys, I promise. We'll, come on. These classes are getting worse and worse as the weeks go on. All right, bear with me. At least, how's the audio? Is the audio good? My stream is gonna go blank for a moment. All right, let's see if it if I did anything, any kind of improvement. Man, that sucks. You guys can't learn anything if everything's blank and blurry. All right, so I mean, are you guys able to see the icons? I know you can see them, but I mean, can you see what they are? Very clear now. Okay, well, that's a good thing. I don't know if I don't know what I did, but you have autofocus on your camera. Well, yeah, I have autofocus on my camera, but I'm talking about the screen share. You should see here in just a minute my ugly face coming up. Working. I haven't even shaved. I've been so busy today. All right. I will get this tight and right soon. And we'll see what we can do, but for now, this will be the broadcast and everything. and just for tonight, and then I'll fine tune things and get everything to where it's crystal clear, 1080p, high def. You should be able to see everything without, you know, having to squint your eyes. But the okay, you can see on the DWC on the hat now, digital wood carver. All right, so I've got some of you guys are texting me, so you might be telling me a little bit about all right. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about edge-lit acrylic signs, creating V-carve signs and creating just, you know, 3D models, how to put 3D models on your edge-lit acrylics. The first thing we're going to start with is some sources before we get into the actual design. And we're going to come in and I'm just going to give you some sources where I get my acrylics and things. Says everyone switch to the 1080 to 1080 in settings. Jeff says everyone switch to 1080 in settings. And that should help. Alright, Google, bear with me a second, guys. Google's now, God almighty, everything's giving me a hard time tonight. Alright, stand by. Oh, that's much clearer at 1080. I can see the icons now, and all that stuff. Yeah, man. Now it's clear. Just Laney had to learn how to do the settings. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, acrylics. When you're doing edge-lit acrylic, you want to use cast acrylic versus like plexiglass or extruded plastics. Any type of extruded plastics. You want cast acrylics. Many of you may, depending on the areas that you live in, many of you may have resources locally where you can pick up cast acrylic. For me, in the Ocala area, there is none. So I have to order my acrylics online. And my best source for acrylics, my go-to source is US Plastic Corp, United States Plastic Corp. And on their website, you want to go to basically the sheet, rod, and shapes in their menu over here on the left, and that will take you to all of their sheet products. Now, there are quite a bit of options to choose from, but we want to come up to the acrylic sheet, rod, and shapes. And under the acrylic sheet, rod, and shapes, acrylic sheeting, and then we want to come down to the cast, extruded and cast acrylic sheet. We do not want, even though they have the extruded and the cast together, we want to make sure that we look and make sure that it's not an extruded acrylic sheet that we're purchasing. We want to make sure that we are looking at the cast acrylic sheets. That the cast acrylic sheets are going to give you much cleaner edges and things that you can smooth out with map gas or you know, a little torch or something, high polish sanding, whatever your method is, so that light will refract through. Now for me, I buy my cast acrylic in 12 by 24 sheets, but they are they come in a variety of sizes and prices and everything. Now my go-to size for any of the cast acrylic I use is the 0.354 inch 12 by 24 cast acrylic. That's what I purchased. But that 0.354, that thickness is where for me, where I want to be, because it's about the same thickness as the LED light strips that you're going to put with it, and it's just a good thickness for the signs, whether these are just maybe tabletop display signs or counter signs, or if you're hanging them up on a wall signs and stuff, if you're building a frame or something around them. So for my cast acrylic source, I use US Plastics, and I purchased the 0.354 cast acrylic sheet, and it comes in a variety of sizes, but for me, simplicity is, you know, I order 12 by 24 unless I have a specific need to go up to the next size up, which would be either the 24 by 24 or 24 by 48, any of that stuff. So that's my source for acrylic. Now for the LED lighting, I usually am an Amazon shopper for that. You can get it on eBay as well. And what you want, I'm going to go to Amazon.com. What you want is the 50/50 LED light strips. So 50/50 LED lights. LED strip lights. Now, these LED strip lights come in quite a large variety of options, and they come on these movie type reels, and you can cut them to length. What thickness? The thickness is 0.354 on the cast acrylic, Jeff. Now, for these real lights, you can get solid color LEDs, green, blues, whites, reds, and all that stuff, whatever color strips that you want. Or you can get the RGB LED strips. And these will give you a variety of colors and castings and stuff. Now, the one thing that I don't like about the... yes, I can add this in the text area. Bear with me one second. We're going to use you want a 0.354 cast acrylic from US Plastic Corp. Let me learn how to spell Corp. All right, now the RGB lights, I like them to the fact that it gives you all kinds of different tones and colors. But when it comes that time that I want a natural white light, you know, some, depending on the LED, you know, the RGB LEDs that you get, their true white is kind of a, you know, almost like a light bluish color. It's got kind of a bluish tint to it because of the RGB. So if I need a true white LED, then I will actually buy that color light, and I will buy that white. But some of the cool things about the RGB kits is you can get your light strips, and you can get, you know, remotes and stuff that you can buy with them, and you can buy extra remotes. You can buy extra power supplies and connectors and everything. You know, the kit that you get comes with one remote and one power supply. After that, you got to kind of fish your own. Don't throw away the old cell phone charger cables or those old power cables and stuff, because they'll come in handy, that you can use for a power supply. The power supplies that I use are a variable voltage, 9 to 12 volt variable voltage. It's got a little switch on the back, and I can vary the voltage depending on the LEDs I get. But those little power cords for portable phones, cell phones, and all that stuff, they're everywhere. And heck, you probably had a yard sale and sold about 20 or 30 of them over your lifetime, or got rid of them, or gave them away, or threw them in the trash. But those, you can buy bulks of those power supplies, from eBay. You can buy bundles of them, and stuff. But on Amazon, I get all my power strips, and I can buy extra remotes if I'm doing the color changing lights and everything. And so the search for an Amazon was just a 50, and I'm typing it into the chat here. LED strip lights. Okay, 50 LED strip lights. And then from there you can choose your package or your kits and stuff. The great thing about these 50 LED strip lights is they can be cut to size, and you get a whole reel with probably like 300 lights on them, 300 LEDs and stuff. And we're making signs, or we're making displays, whatever it is, not necessarily just signs but displays, and depending on their length, I mean, you can get quite a few displays out of a reel of lights. So sourcing the power strips, the power supplies and things like that, here's one here, 12 volt 5 amp power supply for your 50 LED light source. And of course you can if you don't have the proper connector for the banana plug, let's see if I can come into here and zoom in to this. See if I can get that picture to change for me. Maybe. Alright. There we go. So that stereo cable jack, I'll cut it off, because I'm going to be soldering to my LED strips anyway. I'll solder to them and all. But you can buy extra power supplies. You can buy extra remotes. So you can get, a reel of 300 lights, and then you can buy however many, power supplies and things like that. But that banana plug, unless I get the, a proper connector, which you can buy the proper connectors for those, for your LEDs, so they can be plugged in like a jack and stuff. Let's see if I can source that out. But I just cut it off and solder straight to my LED lights. Well, let's see how. Well, there's tons of choices. And this is what I'm looking for here. These little stereo connectors, and they're typically used for your remote receivers and things like that, to give remote receivers your power and all. So I just typically will just cut off the end. Okay, so the sign size is up to you, Jeff. And so for me, I get the 12 by 24 sheets, and or the 24 by 24, depending on what it is. My signs, will usually be within that range. For my smaller stuff. Now my bigger stuff, I'll get a 12 by 48 or a 24 by 48 sheet for my wall hanging signs. But for a lot of my tabletop, I guess you would call it, or countertop designs, I will get the 12 by 24 sheets. And a lot of my wall hanging signs are 12 by 24, so I don't have to do any cutting or anything like that. And yes, if you have not subscribed to this Spindle TV channel, please do. All right, so we've got the plastic sourced, you know, the cast acrylic, should I say? LED lights, and now and power supplies and all that. eBay is a good source too, but I prefer Amazon. You know, a lot of times, but sometimes on eBay you can find bundle deals, man, where you can get like 12 of those power supplies and stuff. When I say wall size, I mean not like a whole 8-foot wall, Jeff, but my my wall size signs are going to be like a 12 by 24 or 24 by 40 if I'm doing a really big kind of display type sign or something. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into the designing, and let's talk about how we would approach a V-carve sign, if we're going to do a 3D model into the design, if we're going to do a profile cut. So let's get into that. So let's jump over to our Vectric design software, whether it's Desktop Pro or Aspire. You can use any of the options. And I love these little pop-ups. I got to figure out how to turn those pop-ups off so they don't show up in my videos. But so for right now, I'm just going to do a 20 by 12 sign or 24 by 12 off of a full sheet. Kind of let me learn how to type in the number 24. And because I'm going to do a bit of a kind of a profile cut or a design and things in here. Now, the two things that I make with my CNC, one is of course the cast acrylic carving, but then the base. We're gonna, we want to make a base for the sign as well. And just to give you an idea on my base, my bases, I tend not to, I used to make just a square block with a groove in the middle of it and all, but I've kind of gotten a little decorative on the bases a little bit more, and depending on if this is going to be a desktop type thing or a wall type thing, if this is a wall type design, then I will have a standoff. Are you guys familiar with what standoffs are? Let me show you what standoff is. A standoff is, let's see here. Sign standoff. Let me go back to the set of 4 pictures so you can see. There we go. And depending on how far it's let it get to that page for you guys and stuff, it probably already is, but depending on these are little standoffs that you have your anchor, depending on what you're anchoring to in the wall, and then you have a nice little tube standoff where you will have a hole cut in your acrylic, and then that threaded kind of cap will go through and thread into that standoff. And you can get your standoffs in 1/2 inch away from the wall, 3/4 inch. You can set all different types of heights and everything. And I'm not sure if you guys can see this blown up version. Hopefully you can. There you go. Yep, you can see it. All right. So these standoffs are real decorative and stuff for your if you're doing like a LED illuminated wall art type sign. And so I get mine off of Amazon as well, and I will buy them either in 4-point kits but you can also buy them in bulk too as well. All right, so we're going to assume that this is going to be, since it's 12 by 24, we're going to assume it's kind of a wall design. And if you want to look at if you want to tell me in the chat if you want to kind of create a smaller design for tabletops, but you can kind of get the idea. It's the same thing. I mean, you're changing your size of wood, and they're pretty awesome. Yeah, the standoffs are really nice. They're kind of a brushed aluminum, in a sense, and they're slick. They're really slick looking. But I'm gonna make a wall sign, and what I want to do first off is I want to create the 4 posts depending on where my standoff is going to be, and I'm going to go with a 0.5 diameter circle, and then of course now your hole for your standoff is going to be totally dependent on the size of the standoff that you get and the size of the diameter and everything that you need. So these standoffs here, they're a 1/2 inch by 3/4. So they can hold material up to, you know, minimum up to 3/10 of an inch thick. I don't know what that means by that, but anyhow, let's go down to the specifications. And these product dimensions, you know, it's about a 1/2 inch in diameter, and you can get just stainless looking. You can get brush loom. There's all kinds of stuff, but 1/2 inch diameter. Now, because it's a 1/2 inch diameter, my post is most likely going to be about a 1/4 of an inch or 3/8, depending on what it will be. And so let's go in, and I'm going to work with, let me resize this. I'm going to go with a 3/8 inch diameter post. Now, placement, nice, whatever's not going to conflict with the design. I do like to stay off of the corner quite a bit. It's not going to shatter the corner and everything when it's drilling the hole, but you never know. It could pop it or something and what have you, because it is cast. So I kind of stay off of the edge, and then we're going to make 4 copies. I'm just going to mirror this over with the mirror tool under the transform objects menu, the 4th icon. And I'm going to make sure I'm creating a mirror copy, and I'm going to flip about job center, and I'm just going to flip it horizontal. That one's going to be selected, so I'm going to flip it vertical. With my 3rd one selected, I'm going to flip it horizontal again, and that will give me the layout for my standoffs. Okay? Yeah, I mean, so Jeff, you've got picture frames. You could do that, yeah, as long as the thickness of the pocket, normally on a standard picture frame, that recess where your glass and whatever goes, which you wouldn't use glass in this case, on the smaller frames, it's only a 1/4 inch deep. If they have larger frames, really nice large frames, you can absolutely frame in the design for sure, and hopefully that's what you meant by the frames. Okay, so let's create our design. And with these being equidistant from the corners, when I mirror my design, for the carving, because we always carve on the back side of the acrylic. When I mirror this, my whole alignment is going to be the same no matter what. So now comes the time, if you're doing a 3D model, your 3D scenes and stuff like that. Let's say that we were, everybody kind of knows what V carving is and creating a V carve sign, but I want to jump into the model sign type first. And so under clip art, or in your library of models, depending on what you have available to you, there are quite a few things where you can build your own scenes and stuff. You can go to design and make, and you can find some really nice models and stuff, and design and projects, landscapes and everything. Well, in my models, I'm going to import, because I don't have anything I really want to build here, but I do have a model that I want to create. So I'm going to use my modeling tab down here, and I'm going to import a component or 3D model under the modeling tab. And under that modeling tab, I'm going to go to my trusty library of STL models. So let me go to where they are, if I haven't moved them. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, it did move. So let me go to my downloads. My model moved on me, and let me grab my model here. All of my download files are saved on a backup drive, just in case my computer ever crashes. And you know, now .stl, because I've seen this come up in the group quite a bit. You know, how to import STL models, how to import just CRV models and things like that. So you got, .stl, .rlf, WRO. There's all kinds of models that you bring in. In the Vectric VCarve Pro and desktop, and I think Aspire too. I haven't really actually looked into it in Aspire, but I think with Aspire you can do more, but with the Pro and desktop you can import one third-party model, meaning that it is not a V3M or a V3 clip Vectric model. It's a model that you purchased offline, and it is a model that you excuse me for a second, that you might have bought at even at Design and Make. They offer you the option of an STL model or anything like that. Those STL files and everything, those are considered third-party models, and you can only import one. Now I'm going to bring in, I have a model called a galloping horse, and I'm going to import that. Now the first thing that it's going to bear with me. There she blows. Alright, now that's an RLF file. So, and it's huge. So here's my workpiece down here, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to size it down. And how did I, real quick, somebody asked how I got the 4 copies of the holes in the corner. When you make your first original hole, under your Transform Objects menu is the Mirror tool, Mirror Selected Objects. And on that Mirror tool, you're going to create a mirror copy, and you're going to flip it about the center of the job, so that way it flips around the center of your workpiece. And we're going to flip it horizontal to go to one side, and then we're going to flip that one vertical, and then that last one we're going to flip horizontal and create those 4 copies. So if I were to delete these with this selected hole, I'm going to flip it horizontal first, and with that second one selected, I'm going to flip it vertical and then flip it horizontal again, and that will create my 4 holes. Okay? Alright, so now I need to resize this. And now this is an RLF. This came in straight into the software. I didn't have to import it like an STL model, which I'm going to show you that as well, because that's where some of the people are struggling. But the RLF comes straight in like a model. And now I'm going to scale it down, and I'm just going to grab the corner up here, this corner, while it's in transform mode, and while holding my shift key, I'm going to scale it down appropriately so it will scale and keep the aspect ratio but centered. And now the shortcut for code to align, the alignment tool is under Transform Objects, the last icon under Transform Objects. The alignment tool to align center to material, I can click that, or the shortcut code on your keyboard is F9. And I need to scale this down much more. So again, holding my shift key, I'm dragging my mouse in with my left mouse button held down. And now that I'm on my workpiece, I can kind of get where I want it. All right, so let's zoom in so you guys can see this in its full glory here. All right, so when you're looking at your 2D view, your model comes in as a grayscale image. It looks like a grayscale image. And so when you're looking at the 3D model view, the 3D model tab, it comes in as the 3D model. Okay? And this is, oops. If you move, controls or undo button if you accidentally click on that. But this will be the 3D model here. A nice little horse and her colt, saddle, and little stable or farm in the background. Just a nice little a wall piece. Now, and when you're sizing, now when you're scaling and everything, I double clicked on the image and threw it into transform mode. And with transform mode, it will allow me to, scale, stretch, rotate, move, anything that I want. And to simply keep it centered into scale, I'm just grabbing one of the corner boxes to keep its aspect ratio, holding down the shift key, and I'm scaling it to size. Now, I can absolutely go into the transform object tools, and I can open up the size tool, and I can set a size in the size tool. And there are other shortcut codes for sizing as well. Read in the chat, some of you are talking about the shortcut keys. Why not use the T key? And all that for T for thickness and everything. And we're talking about size, X and Y. We haven't done anything with the thickness yet. So we want to go ahead and now is the time that we want to focus on the thickness when we have it laid out how we want. All right, so let me get this laid out how I want. All right, that looks good. Yeah, that'll be nice. Now, my cast acrylic is has a thickness of 0.354. Okay. Well, this model has a thickness, or a Z height, shall you call it, of 3/8 of an inch, or 3/4, not sorry, 3/4 of an inch, 0.7874. And I want to make sure that I scale this down. And for me, I try not to go any deeper, whether I'm V carving or whether I'm carving a 3D model. I kind of stay around the 0.2 cut depth, or 1/4 of an inch at the most, 0.25. I want to leave a little bit of thickness on that front side of that model, that acrylic. So the thing about, when you're sizing or scaling models, when you scale the Z height, you could lose some detail. Now, in Aspire, you have the ability to scale the Z height while maintaining detail. And there's an option, a tool for that. Scale Z height while maintaining detail, and to its best of its ability. But with the VCarve Pro and the desktop software, you can just scale the Z height. And as you scale it down, there's going to be some detail that's going to get muted. So if I came in and scaled this down to a 0.25, as it scales down, I'm going to lose some detail, like in my fence. I lost some of the grain, the really nice grain in there. I lost some of the detail in the horse and all. The colt, how it stands off from its mama. And, so there is a little bit of a sacrifice there. Now with your Aspire software, if you have Aspire software, you have the ability to scale the Z to a certain height while maintaining detail. And then just know that, okay? Now, the one thing that, once I set my Z height, and everything, let's let these pop up here. Pop-ups go away. Once I set my Z height, then basically with a 3D model, if I'm doing a scene like this, I'm done. All I have to do now is mirror the design, because this is the way I want it to face when it's mounted on the wall. So, but I'm carving on the back side, so I need to mirror and flip this design. And so in the mirror tools under transform objects, I'm not going to create a mirrored copy. I want to still flip it about the job center, and I'm going to flip it horizontal and mirror that, that design and everything, so that I can make sure that it's facing the way I want it to face when I carve this. Now, the next thing that I wanted to do, and let me undo my little move slide there. The next thing I want to do is I am carving this in to the acrylic, because I'm going to be mirroring this design. And I'm not carving it up like you would on wood. If I was carving this on wood, then I would have everything extruded up. And if I turn this into the y-axis, I would have everything extruded up and standing off of that wood. Well, we're carving this 3D design into the acrylic. We're carving it into the acrylic. So we need to go into the properties of this model. The properties tool looks like a black wrench, and it is it's in your modeling tab, up at the top, second icon from the left. Okay, and with this, the combine mode, or combine with other components mode. Right now we are kind of in an add mode where it's extruding upward. We need to reverse that, and we need to subtract it. Okay, we need to subtract it because we're carving this design into the acrylic. We want it to look 3D from the front. We want that nice glow 3D and everything from the front. So we want to reverse it in the properties, which is a kind of a subtract mode. You've got in your modes, when you're working with models, you have add, subtract, merge, merge low, and then multiply. Those 5 icons. And add is that extruded. We're adding one model on top of the other, and in this case we only have one model, but we're adding one model on top of the other. And if we want them to blend together, like this grass, and let's turn this model back up right here, like this grass blends well with these posts. It looks like the posts are down in the grass. The rails of the post are blending in with the models. Well, that's merging these models together. So you have your merge tool. and stuff. You know, and we don't have more than one model in here. We only have one model, so merge doesn't apply in this case. But we're going to get into down the road. We'll get more and more into modeling because I know a lot of you are new. We have a lot of existing members. We have a lot of new members and everything, but and new customers that had just got their machines and stuff. And so all of this stuff is new. Don't worry. You don't have to play catch up because our classes will be, we'll be revisiting basic classes that we did in the past and stuff. It's not like once it's gone, it's gone. And on the Spindle TV channel, the classes will start to be uploaded. So we'll have a directory, and a library for our channel and everything. But if modeling, if don't worry if it's above your head or if it scares you or intimidates you or all that stuff, you can always call me. As always, you can always call me, Digital Woodcarver customers, and I can help you out. I can guide you through, and train you on that. All right, so we've got this in a subtract mode, and my height is still 0.25. And so now I'm going to go ahead and close the properties. And now I'm ready to create the toolpath. This is it for my design. I'm done with it. We're going to do a V-carve sign where there's more involved, but I wanted to talk to you about the 3D model right at this moment. And so now I'm going to switch over to the toolpath side. And with the toolpath, depending on your model and your model thickness and everything, will determine if you need to do a roughing toolpath and a finished toolpath, roughing out all the waste material and hogging it out. For this, there's not much of a roughing needed. There's not much material, but there is quite a bit material. So I am going to use a small roughing bit. And so I will create a roughing toolpath. When you're working with a 3D model, you have two toolpaths, your 3D roughing and your 3D finish. So I'm going to create a 3D roughing toolpath. Now before I create a toolpath, the first thing you should get in the habit of doing, which I didn't do just now when I clicked on that 3D toolpath, is to always check your material setup up here at the top. And when you check that material setup, what this is going to do is going to give you an at-a-glance look at where we are, what's the thickness of our material. Right now, the thickness of my material is incorrect, right? It's 1.5 inches. You see that? So when I set up this job a moment ago, I didn't look at my material. So my material thickness is 0.354 on my extruded plastic. I just recently started using the new Digital Woodcarver Quick Set tool. I used to work off the center and find the center and everything, but I've got the new DWC Quick Set, which you guys and girls are supporting, and many of you are going to have yours, soon, hopefully. If you're on the list, by the way, I do have a list of names and everything for everybody that said they wanted one. So you're on the list for that. But I'm going to set off on the bottom left corner, and I'm going to be touching off on my material surface for this. Okay. Now, because I'm carving in to the material, then my model thickness, I want to, on my model thickness and everything in here, you want to make sure that your model falls into the right positioning. Now, when you're carving in wood, I've always told you during the training classes that you want to put a little 0.02 or 0.01, you want to put a little bit of meat above your model, up there. And for this, because we're carving, you got to think of kind of a negative instead of a positive in a sense. We're carving into the acrylic. We just want to bring it to, the surface to 0. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my model height, let's make sure my model is turned on. 0.5. Alright, that's all done. Because an RLF is acts a little differently with our models. And my model is turned off for some reason. Where the heck did it go? Where'd you guys put my model? Hold on a second. There's my model. Oops. Kind of wondering where my model went to for a minute there. Kind of glitched on me there for a second. Alright. So, there we go. Did you see that? There's a little bit of a glitch there. The model wasn't there. Alright. So, let's set this up 0.354. I'm going to set it up at the bottom left corner. Now, where'd it go again? Hold on a second there. Am I turned around backwards? Why is my model doing that? Why is my model doing that? Alright. What's happening here? Somebody playing a trick on me? Alright, hold on a second. Well, what in Shagnabbit is going on here? Stand by, folks, ladies and gentlemen. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Alright. I don't know where my model keeps disappearing to. Let's go in here and let me look at my model properties and make sure that I don't have some kind of funkiness in here. So my shape height, my base height is 0. That was weird. I'm gonna look and see what y'all are saying. It glitches because you changed and moved your lower left corner and did not recenter. Oh. How stupid am I? Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Or no. Who is? Give me your name. DWC Crafting Woodworks, because we know each other, but I don't know what your name what it shows up as. I have no, I'm in the bottom left corner there. Hold on a second. Let me see here. Let's see here. 0.354. Alright. He was right and I was wrong. He was right and I was wrong. Dennis. Hey, Dennis. Alright. When I was in the center, when I moved from center to bottom left corner, it took the model and threw it off. It kind of glitched. And it was puzzling me. It was perplexing me. So there we go. Alright, geez Louise. I'm supposed to be teaching you guys this stuff and you're teaching me. Alright, anyway. So my model's at 0. And here is most important, guys. You really want to, even when you're doing a simple V-carve sign, forget cast acrylic for a minute. If you're carving anything, you want to periodically or every time, I don't care what habit you get into, you want to check your material setup and you want to check your home start position. Have you ever hit the start button on your CNC and that router rams up to the top and you hear da 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 da, and all of a sudden it starts going crazy and carving real deep and cutting into your wood and you're wondering what happened and all? because the very first thing that the CNC does when you on that G code, that toolpath, the very first thing it does is it makes sure that you're at your home start position before that router turns on. And so when you zero out your machine, this home start position, what this means is it's going to check to make sure that I'm at XY0 and my router, the tip of my bit, is at 0.8 above my board before it turns on the router and starts its cutting, pass and everything. Well, if you are, that 0.8, with the 2440 DWC 2440 unit, you have a 5-inch safe Z height. With the 24 DWC 1824, the mini carver, you have a 4-inch safe Z height. With the DWC 5100, our big machine, you got an 8-inch safe Z height. So you want to make sure that if you're using a spoil board, the thickness of your material, how much bit you have sticking out of your router, all of that stuff has to fall within that 5 inches, and plus this start position, how far that router is going to raise up before it turns on. And if this number is too high, and it's going to try to raise up 1.5 inches, because that's what I just typed in there. When it starts and all, I'm not going to have that kind of clearance, and I'm going to ram the top of my limit on my Z positive, my Z positive, and I am going to when I do that, when I hit that limit, I'm going to lose my settings, and then all of a sudden it's a bad day for me and my piece of material that I'm carving in. So what you want to do, please get in the habit of looking at this. And 0.8 is a good default for a Z-gap. Now from that 0.8, when you got a wasteboard that you're putting under your on your project and everything and all this, this number should be going down and stuff to make sure you can maintain good clearance and all. I don't care if you go down to 0.2 or 0.10 or whatever, you just want to make sure you stay under 0.8. Now, that's when you're carving and you're touching off on the top of your material. Okay? When you're touching off on the top of your material. This Z0 position is the material surface. Now, that game or that rule changes when I'm touching off on the machine bed. Okay? When I touch off on the machine bed, which means I'm either touching off to my tabletop or the top of my waste board, now this Z gap above material, this start position, I need to, number one, make sure that it's at least higher than the thickness of my material, so it raises up above my board. I don't want it raising up halfway through my board and then trying to, start, or going down into the board and all and start up and just ruin my project. So if I was touching off on the bottom of the material and I've got a 0.354, I need to at least be at 0.4 so it's raising above that. Now, if I, for some reason, am not, let's say that my start depth is, my gap above zero is 0.2. Well, because my thickness up there is 0.354, when I click OK, I should get a warning. I didn't get a warning. Okay, that's fine. But I want you to look what happened up here. If you can see in this Z, and I'll open up my set position again, I want you to see what happened. Is it took my gap above material and added it to that 0.354, and it created a Z home start position of 0.554. That's going to be the first line in the G code, line 4 actually in the G code, 4 or 5, and it's now it says, hey, wait a minute. In version 8 and 8.5, it used to set up a pop-up box that says, hey, we moved your Z height to a safe position. But in version 9, it just automatically does it for you. I kind of like when that pop-up box pops up and warns you, you know, that's saying just to remind you. But just know that look up here and you'll see that home position is X0, Y0, Z 0.554, which is my 0.354 plus that 0.2. Regardless of that, if my material is 0.354, then I'm going to at least be at 0.4. Now it's still no matter what, it's still going to add to this number. So when I click OK, you see my Z height is 0.754, right? And that's fine. That's fine. I just want to make sure that I stay under this Z height, that I stay under my clearance. 0.8 is my default, you know. I know that being at 0.754, I'm safe. I'm not going to hit the limit of my table. But I don't ever want to come in here when I'm touching off on the bottom of my material and put in, you know, let's say 8 here when I'm touching off on the bottom, and then my thickness is going to add that in, and now I'm raising up 1.154 inches, and I might not have that kind of clearance, and I'm going to ram the top, and I'm not going to be able to figure out what in the heck's going on, you know, if I don't know it. So I want you guys to know that, okay? And so I'm going to set this back up properly. I'm touching off on my material surface, and my default number is 0.8, and I'm going to click OK, and my start depth should be 0.8 because I'm working off the top of my material, my start Z height, my safe Z height, or my start Z height, should I say. Now, you have your material thickness set to 1.5 inches. Yes, I corrected that. Thank you, Glenn. I'm catching up a little late on your comments. If you're using jigs, really watch that number. Yes, Dennis, because the last thing you want to do is cut into one of your jigs, man. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got our material set up. Now we're going to go in and create our roughing tool. And I'm sorry about that little rant, not, you know, that little long explanation or rant. Hopefully you understood what I mean. I just really want to drill that into you guys, because a lot of times we don't look at our G code, we don't look at our material setup, we just kind of just go with it, and then we don't realize that that number changed, you know, because we decided to touch off on the bottom or on the top or whatever of our material, and that number changed, and all of a sudden when we go to hit start on that pretty piece of walnut or, you know, curly maple or what have you, and all of a sudden it just comes in and just tears it up, and we're just kind of a little pissed. First thing we're going to do is we're going to blame the machine. What's happening with my CNC? What's going on with it? Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? You know, and you know, a lot of times, you know, it's the G code, or you know, or the setting or something and stuff. And so we just want to always be aware of everything. You know, we've got mechanical issues, we've got software issues, we've got design issues, we've got bit issues, all of these issues that are surrounding us, waiting to pop up their evil little heads. And, you know, we want flawless, you know, results, flawless carvings. We want to be able to rock out all day long making sawdust with not a hiccup one. But, you know, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong from time to time. I don't want to scare you about carving anything, but just make sure you cover all your bases. You know what your safe Z height is. You take a look at that G code when you open it up in your software, and we'll open up the software, the CNC controller software at the end of this, and we'll take a look, and I'll show you where to find that line 4 and everything. All right. So okay, so now for this I'm going to use a small end mill. For this I'm going to use a 3/16 inch end mill. For my rough cut, I don't need a big 1/4-inch bit, and I might not have my 3/16" mill in here. Nope. So let me create one. Here's a good opportunity to teach you how to create a bit. So I'm going to go in here, and under my end mills, under my end mill category, I'm going to click New, and I'm going to select on the type. Tool type is going to be an end mill. My diameter is a 0.1875 end mill. It's a 3/16 end mill, straight bit. You know, I'm going to use. And for this, my pass depth, I typically, rule of thumb is the pass depth is half the diameter of your bit or less, or you can go the full diameter of the bit, you know, depending on, you know, I wouldn't do that for a 1/2-inch bit, you know, up to an 1/8 inch or a 1/4-inch bit, depending on what I'm doing. I might, but I stick with the rule of thumb, half the diameter of the bit or less. So if I did my math, which I'm not going to do it, I'm going to let Vectric do it for me. In this box here, this pass depth, I'm going to type in 0.1875, the divided by sign, and the number 2, and then I'm going to hit the equal sign and let it put that in there for my pass depth. Okay, I'm going to go half that depth of my bit, diameter of my bit. So you can do math in those boxes. For the step over, I like a 33.3% step over with my end mills, but anywhere, you know, 50 and under, I really kind of recommend 40 and under, you know, because a lot of upcut and downcut spirals, they have a little V groove in the middle, and I like to step over less than that, so I'm kind of not getting little lines and stuff in my design. So I go to 33.3%, go a third of the bit over. And for this end mill, I can run 55 inches a minute, and for the plunge, I'm just going to run it at 20. Now, feed rate with cast acrylics. You know, do you slow down? Do you speed up? Do you turn the RPMs down on your router or your spindle? What are good things, you know, to do? For me, on my cast acrylic, I typically tend to run the same speeds and feeds that I do for my wood, like when I'm carving my pine and things like that. Now, that's me. That, you know, that's my for me. But you might be out on a chat board, or you might be out on a Facebook or something like that, and, you know, ask somebody the question, you know, how do you cut your acrylics? And you know, what speed and feeds do you run at, and they may give you a little bit of a, you know, difference. Now, what it comes down to is, if I was using an extruded plastic tends to chip and melt and stuff. So for that melting, I want to slow down my RPMs. And now if you have a router on your CNC, then you won't use this This doesn't do anything for you here. If you have a spindle, then yes, this does. But if you have a router, this box doesn't do anything for you. You have a turn dial, a little speed dial on the top of your router, and you want to slow down in an extruded plastic. You want to speed up your feed rate to be faster and your spin RPMs to be slower. If anybody disagrees with that, please let me know in the chat what you run yours at and everything like that, because, you know, there's more than one correct answer in a lot of things. But I would tend to, you know, the high number 6 dial on your router is 24,000 RPMs. I tend to back that down to between like 5 and 4, which it ranges around 20,000 RPMs, 20 to 22,000 or 20,000 RPMs, and then I will run, you know, a faster speed on extruded plastics and all. Now, a lot of times with extruded plastics, you have a little molten ball of lava or hot plastic build up on the tip of that bit. You want to periodically stop the machine and pick that off, or it's going to mess up your design. Now for this, I'm going to come in and I'm going to run at 55 inches a minute and 20 inches a minute for my plunge on this cast acrylic. And I'm going to click apply for that for my tool. So that's going to be my end mill. Now I do not want a boundary offset. I do not want a boundary offset, but I absolutely want the model as the boundary. I do not want to carve the rest of my cast acrylic away. I want to just carve within the boundary of my model. I want to use my model as the boundary. And from time to time, you may want to let it go over the boundary a little bit. Even if I do, it's going to be the radius of the bit. The radius of the bit. So, that 0.0937 is, if I was to do a boundary offset to let it go beyond the model boundary, then I do the radius of the bit is about as far as I'll go. All right, now, so I'm gonna no offset, model is the boundary. I want to raster along my x-axis. I want to cut with the grain. Now this really doesn't matter with cast acrylic because you want there's no grain. There's no grain with it. So you can raster X or raster Y. I prefer to raster X because it's my longest axis, so I get longer runs instead of a lot of jogging, bam, 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 back and forth on short runs. And so I'm going to raster X for this roughing strategy, and then I'm going to, this is going to be my 01. It's 12 by 24. Galloping horse, and this is my 0.1875 EM end mill. So I'm going to name my toolpath and I'm going to click calculate. Now the allowance left is greater than 20% of the tool diameter of your bit. Leaving a larger allowance slows down the toolpath calculation time and may lead to finishing tool breakages. Okay, so my large machining allowance is larger than 20% of the diameter of my bit. So I want to click OK, and I may want to look at my machining allowance, how much material that I want to leave, and let's go back into that. And I may want to come in and reduce that a little bit. I'll just do a 0.02 allowance. Alright, so my rough cut on my cast acrylic, it's going to look useless and lifeless here when I do the finish cut and everything, because we're carving into the wood instead of out, but you can imagine what it would look like when it's 3D and everything. Alright, so with that roughing toolpath created, now we're going to jump right over to the finishing toolpath. The finishing toolpath is, you've got, when you're working with a model, you got two toolpaths you deal with. So we're going to create that. And for this, your ball nose end mill, okay, you want to use a ball nose end mill. And with the cast acrylic, your regular ball nose end mill that let's say you have the 705 starter bit set from Whiteside, or hopefully you guys have bought into the Mana tool sets and all. If not, Merry Christmas, get yourself one for your stocking stuffers. But those ZRN coated bits are really awesome. But typically you can use your ball nose bit in acrylic, and it's going to be the same effect as wood. It's not going to, you can use that bit. But now I wouldn't recommend using a regular ball nose bit in aluminum, brass, bronze, or anything like that, unless it's a specialty bit, a metal cutting bit, or if it's a ZRN, zirconium nitrate coated bit which allows for carving in multiple materials. It gives it a harder, it's a much harder surface and everything for carving in materials like that. And the and Tad, I'll get back to your answer on that allowance setting as soon as I go back into that. Give me 1 second. Now for the ball nose, I'm going to be using a tapered ball nose 1/8 inch end mill for this. I think I can get a good detail with that. If I wanted to get finer detail, I could use a my smaller 16th inch tapered ball nose, but I think my 1/8 inch I can get away with it. And so I'm going to use that. And again, I'm going to change my plunge here. Actually go 20. My feed rate for this, I'm actually going to speed it up a little bit with my 1/8 inch end mill. I don't know how my settings keep getting changed, but I'm going to be running this about 55 inches a minute, 20 minutes on the plunge. You can tend to run a little faster as well too in your acrylics. So we're going to click apply and we're going to lock that in. Now again, I'm using the model as the boundary as I did with the roughing cut. And I'm not going to do any allowance. I'm going to just allow it to cut right up to the model here. I'm not going to do any offset. And I am going to raster. Now, when the machining strategy, the rastering, with the rough cut, it said raster X or raster Y. Well, with the finish cut raster, you have a raster angle. So a 0 degree raster angle means I'm carving along my X axis. And a 90 degree carving angle means I'm carving along my Y axis. Okay? So you, instead of raster X or raster Y, you have a raster angle. Now, you can also, you don't have to be just plain old 0 or 90. You can do, a 30 degree raster. You can do, multiple degrees. It just depends on, what it is you're doing. The cast acrylic, when that light comes through, it refracts on that carved area. So let's look at a LED edge lit sign. A lot of cool samples of signs and everything. Let's see if I can find one with the lights turned off. Probably not, because they're wanting to display it in full glory. We'll use this as an example. All right. So when you're carving a 3D model and everything, as that bit is carving, it is scuffing that crystal clear cast acrylic, and it's creating these scuff marks in there, these cut marks and on. It's kind of almost frosting the surface of the glass. And that frosting, that light, that's what that light refracts to. It captures inside that, the color lights capture inside that scuffed area of your LED. Just like, if you look down here, there's a scratch on the LED in the bottom right corner, and so that scratch is getting picked up. That light is picking up that scratch because it refracts in those carved areas. So we want a really tight, step over. 8% is what I'm doing with this. We want a really, nice little scuffing in here. So you can change your raster angle any way you want. I'm going to go with just a straight 0 raster because my ball nose bit's going to scuff this up enough for refracting anyway. Play around with that and see the different effects that you'll get. 12 by 24 galloping horse. And then we're going to go back to Ted's question here. Tad's question. Not Ted, Tad. and this is a 0.125 bien ball nose. So we'll save that. Let it calculate. Now, Tad was asking what the machining allowance is in the rough cut, and what that is how much material that I'm leaving after the rough cut is complete. How much material I'm leaving for the finish bit to clean up. So if I had a 0 machining allowance, that means I'm milling right up to that model. Okay, and I tend not to do that. You want to leave some type of machining allowance. I don't care how small it is, but you can't go over. You don't want it too big either, because you don't want it to go over. You know, in this case, like I got that warning, 20% the diameter of the bit, because we want to leave a little bit of material for that finished bit to have to clean away. I don't like getting too close to my finish cutting with my end mill, with my flat end mill. I don't know. I don't want to do it. So 0.04, a 0.04. Let me go back into that rough cut. A 0.04 is typically my default. Like if I'm using a 1/4 inch for my rough cut, that's what for my bigger models and stuff I tend to do. But in this case, I'm using a 3/16 inch end mill. So 0.04 was you know, too big, and so I reduced it down to a 0.02 and 20 thousandths of an inch. And I'm leaving that allowance. I'm leaving that much material above that 20 thousandths of an inch of material for my finish bit to clean up. Okay. All right. All right. Hopefully that answered the question for you, Tad. And go from there. All right. So now with that finish toolpath calculated, it's in a negative, but it looks great. And man, when we flip that bad boy over, it looks really good. You know, that when that light refracting in there, I wish I could show you kind of a simulation of what it would look like. But I can't. It'll look sharp. It'll look sharp. Now, if I wanted a little bit more scuffing, if I want a little bit more, you know, scuffing in there to really, you know, like that flower that we just showed here, you know, they got a really tight step over. It's not in line. It's not, you know, a particular, you know, X or Y axis. It's more of a kind of a, you know, they've got a little bit of an angle in there to create it. And you can even, instead of a raster, you can even use an offset. The offset, but though, creates kind of it starts in the center of a design and it works its way out. And so those swirl marks and stuff, I kind of like, you know, to be, you know, tight and straight, you know, versus the circular motions. But again, we wouldn't use an offset cut. Let me go back to my Vectric. You know, in the finishing cut, we wouldn't use an offset toolpath unless we were doing a pocket or something, because we don't want to carve with the grain against the grain, with the grain against the grain, with the grain against the grain, right? A lot of cleanup on that against the grain. We want to go with the grain. We want to raster back and forth. Well, acrylic is different. We don't have a grain. It's an extruded plastic, you know, or cast, I'm sorry, cast acrylic, with our cast acrylic. It's a cast, resin cast acrylic and everything. So, all right, so that's the 3D model. Now, this design's not finished yet. I've still got to create the toolpath for my standoffs. Bum, 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 bum. This is going to be just a pocket cut. So I've got all 4 of them selected. And this pocket cut is going to be a cut depth, start depth of 0, cutting to 0.354. Or you can go 0.35, you know, 364 if you want to go a little bit into your wasteboard. But, you know, I tend to just, you know, we can go, you know, the full depth there. If you touch off your 0 and you got a good touch off and all, it'll cut through. And the bit, again, for this, because I'll probably run those at the same time that I do my rough cut, I'm just going to use my 3/16 inch end mill. That way I can cut the hole cuts and my rough cut all in one toolpath. Yeah, I can save those two separate toolpaths as one. And so this will fall under the 01 category too. 12 by 24 galloping horse. And this is going to be my 0.1875. Yeah. Now you can come in here, and so you know what it is and all. You can come in here and I could separate and put in you know, this is my through holes, you know, or what have you. So we'll just calculate that out. All right, so now if I run that that preview there, you know, that'll be my 4 sconce holes, my standoffs and everything. And now, of course, when I flip this over, the horse is going to be facing the other way on the cast acrylic. You got to use your imagination. I don't have a piece of cast acrylic here, but you'll get it. All right, so that's the 3D model. Now, any questions that I can answer before we move on to a yes. Yes, Dennis, I do flame and heat my edges that I want to light up, especially if I'm, now they come you know, cleared and everything right out of the gate. There may be a little bit of scuffing and stuff that I want to polish out and re-flame out and smooth up, but if I cut this on my table saw, I absolutely want to sand my edges, and then I use a map gas to flame those edges and to clear up those edges. And if you're not familiar with that technique, maybe one day we'll do a tutorial on that. You know, a step-by-step tutorial. I'll even write it out in kind of a blog with a PDF or something. But you know, clearing up those edges of your acrylic, especially with the saw cuts and everything. But gassing the edges or cutting the edges or heating the edges will create a crystal clear edge for that light to reflect through. Okay, and let's see here. In the wood, when I'm carving 3D, if the model is less than 0.25 deep, I do not rough cut. Anything over that I rough cut with a 0.25 end mill, leaving a 0.05 offset, just to be sure I do not hit my model. Yeah, so like Dennis says, you know, in a lot of times you don't have to create a 3D rough cut because your model's not, you know, a certain thickness and everything. My model on my design, if I go into my 3D view here, the deepest part of my model is probably right around the forehead or the saddle here, and even the top of the post. So I'm only cutting, you know, 0.1872 deep here, 0.1931 around the saddle. The horse's forehead, let's see what we're at there, you know, 0.04. No, that's not much. So I don't have a lot of deep cuts. This is my deepest cut right here, 0.1819, you know, somewhere around there and everything. So I, not necessarily needing a rough cut on this, my ball nose bit could have handled that and everything, and it just depends. I just run a rough just to kind of hog away some of this waste material so that my bits, you know, not having to work as hard. Now Tad got his answered question good, and this will be recorded. No, this is a YouTube live video. It is recorded right now, and yes, so it's going to be live on YouTube. So yeah, it's recorded. Now, the All right, so with this, now the yeah, it's a YouTube video, so it's going to be live on there. But I wanted to record a backup copy for myself, and you reminded me that I didn't hit record. But this video is recorded on YouTube for the stream. But I wanted to have a backup copy for myself, and I didn't. I'll be darned. That's okay. I can pull it off of YouTube. All right, so now. But thanks, Jeff, for reminding me of that. I got to remember to do that for myself in the future. Now, the any questions on this before I move on to because we're gonna go into like V carving and cutting out profile cuts of your acrylic and everything to kind of create shapes and illuminate. If you look at some of these samples here, if we close this here, one of the very cool thing is giving your cast acrylic, instead of just that square block type sign, giving it some shape and some definition, and you can really get some cool looks going on and everything. My favorite is with the classic cars and everything. Cutting out the acrylic and just cutting out that body or that shape of the car so that it's in there. So we're going to talk about our profile cuts and everything, and we just want to get into that now. So take a look. Let's see here. Let's get into that. Let's go into here. And I'm just going to file save this one because I might want to make this one day. So let me save this. And I got to save it because I'm going to provide this file to you guys anyway. And yes, you will get the RFL file with it. The horse, the galloping horse. Galloping horse. Cast acrylic. All right. Let that save. And then we're not going to be much longer. We're going to cut out here in a little bit. I don't want to go run too long. But I want to talk about this, V cars, because there was not much to this as far as, we just brought it in, flipped it, and then made some adjustments. But let's close this, and we're going to create a new file. This time I'm going to do a 12 by 12 sign. I'm going to cut my acrylic in half so I can make two signs out of it. And again, it's going to be a 0.354. Oops. Let's make that a 0 and make this one 0.354. Alright, I am going to work off the bottom left corner. Click OK. Alright, so now with this, I'm actually going to change that. I'm going to work off the center for the designing because I like when everything pops up in the center, but I will change it before I calculate my toolpath to the bottom left corner. I don't like everything popping up down here on the bottom left corner. I mean, having to drag it into the screen. All right, so with this now, we want to create a design, whatever it may be. And let me see what I even have. I know I've got a lot of different images and stuff. Let's see what I've even got. If Joe Steinbeck was watching, he'd be like, "Oh, I hope he's got a 57 Chevy," because he was looking for one of those the other day in the group. All right, so what do we want to do here? Bum, 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 bum. I want it to be a V-carve. So should have had all this picked out before I got started here. Bear with me a second. Let's do the wolf. Let's do this wolf. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom into the wolf, and I'm going to come in and open up the Trace Bitmap tool, the first icon, last row of the Create Vectors, and turn my fading off on my image, and I want to kind of pull this in a little bit. When you're tracing an image, you can trace an image with a black and white option or a color option. The black and white option or color option, you have with the black and white option, you have a slide bar here that you slide back and forth until you get the the look that you want and stuff. And so I'm gonna come in and pull this to right about there. If I was using, and then I would click my default corner fit. I tend to use the defaults, but you can play around with this. I do want to change this. I'm not going to use the default noise. I'm going to bump this up to about a 7 on the noise to get rid of some of these little pixels and stuff that are in here that I don't want to trace. But the once I have those settings and I click preview, it will trace my design. Okay, so very simple. But now a color trace is different. So a color trace is going to look at all the colors that are in your photo, and it's going to come over and want you to check off, and you're going to want to check off the colors that you want to fill in. And you want to, let me get rid of my black lines, by the way. So I'm going to fill in, and my trace color is red. So as I'm checking off these boxes, I'm filling in as much as I can to make sure that I don't grab anything that I don't want. So as I go through, if I start checking off, now I'm starting to pick up noise and everything that I don't want. So I'm going to stop there. Okay? I'm going to stop there. And now my lines are going to be drawn around that fill or trace color. And by the way, this is a terrible picture. It's a terrible size picture to be working with. And I'm going to show you how to make sure you get good picture qualities. When you're searching for images online. So we're going to go again and click preview, and it will trace out that image. Okay, so either one of the two options, either the color or the black and white trace, either one of the two options will meet your needs and stuff. And let's back this down to here. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to hit apply to lock that in and close to close that tool. And then I'm automatically, as soon as I do that, the first thing you do is come up here and shut that bitmap layer off. Shut that bitmap layer off because we don't need that picture anymore. Okay? Now, let's pause for a second and go look at if we were searching for an image online. What would what would be the best way to find an image? And so let's say that I was looking for a wolf. I'm going to type in the word wolf and the word vector. Now, if you're using Internet Explorer, if you're using Bing, if you're using Yahoo, if you're using whatever, go to Google. Use a Google, go to google.com and use the Google search. Google is going to be your friend when you're searching for images, okay? And I'm going to show you why here in a moment. But wolf, I'm going to type in the keyword search vector after that, and I'm going to look for my wolf images. Okay, once I get there, I'm going to click on images so I can see all these images. And now I'm going to use the Google tools, and I'm going to ask Google to filter out my options even more by showing me images that are larger than 800 by 600. The larger the better for tracing, and 800 by 600 is a good kind of a minimum, for yourself. 800 by 600. And then I'm going to come over and choose the type. I can choose any type of any of these pictures. I can come in and trace and stuff and all, but I like to first take a look at line drawings. I like to first take a look at line drawings and everything. Okay, and to give you an example, this wolf right here is, you know, it's gorgeous. I like it. I like the way it looks and everything. It's a gorgeous looking wolf right there. But line drawing. So now I've got dozens of images to choose from. Now, copyright, user rights, right? You know, if you want to, if you worry about that, you want, you can have it filtered. You know, filtered for reuse with modification, labeled for reuse, labeled for non-commercial reuse with modification, non for commercial, you know, reuse, whatever. If you want to filter it out by user rights and stuff, we can filter it out even further and things, and we can, you know, see what we get. But, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to get into that debate and everything on YouTube with people and all, but when you trace an image, you know, it falls under the, it does, you know, it falls under, you do not sell the graphic or nothing. You're not selling the graphic, that picture that someone just created, that one right there. You're creating a carving, and that trace is an artist rendering, and it doesn't really fall under the copyright laws. But it depends on the state that you're in. It depends on all that. If you want to know more about that, research copyright laws if you ever have a question about that. I'm not the guy to ask about it because I am not a lawyer, and I'm not going to advise you. But on my usage rights, I don't filter those out. I just look what I like and grab what I want. But again, you know, now there's some very cool wolves in here, and I see quite a few that I'd like to trace and have card that would look awesome lit up as an LED light. And everything. But anyway, so tools, use your Google tools, larger than 800 by 600. Filter out, you know, the type, you know, line drawings. You can use any type, like I said, but the line drawings are easy because they're mostly black and white, and they're great quality to trace. They're perfect for tracing and everything. You know, very simple tracing and stuff. And there's a lot of cool samples in there. Yes, I do need an assistant to remind me of stuff from time to time, for sure. Where were you, Dennis, when I needed you, right? So let's get out of that. So, you know, Google search your images, type in what you're looking for with the keyword vector, and that will be what you want to use. Now, there's some stuff that I want to delete out of here that I don't want in there. So this image is grouped together, this solid pink line. When I click on it, I need to ungroup it, and that's under the Edit Object Tools, first row, fifth icon, or you can simply use the keyboard shortcut, and you can hit the U key on your keyboard, you know, for ungroup, and the G key for group. You know, so I want to ungroup this. I want to hold down my shift key and select just this item here. Oops. I don't want to hold the shift key down. I just want to select this item here and delete that. Now I'm going to go through and select my wolf again and regroup it back together just for kicks and giggles because I don't want anything to move. Now here, I'm going to size this up. And I'm going to put some text in here as well. All right. All right, so I got Howl at the Moon in here, and I'm going to find a decent font for this. We'll go with just a simple block font. Type deal. Let's see here. We'll go with a Tarzan font. Tahoma font's fine. I'm gonna go with a 1-inch tall text, and I'm gonna click on that. Now, I'm going to move this down off the wolf because I want to talk to you about when you type a text block. A text block is when you type in and you hit enter and you use multiple lines in here, whether it be a paragraph, sentence, and all that stuff, whatever. But let's say that you want one line on top of your design, one line on the bottom of your design, you know, one line in the middle of your design, whatever the case may be, and you want to be able to move those designs around. Well, you don't have to create every single line by itself. You can write out your text block. You can type out that line 1, hit enter, type out that second line, that third line, because when you hit apply, you can right click on the that text line and you can break that text block into text lines. And so now these are 2 individual lines of text. And I'm going to bring the moon down here. And Howlat I'm going to bring up here. Snap center. Okay. Now on the Howlat, I want to give it a little bit of a contour, not so straight. So my edit text spacing and curve tool, when I click on that, you're going to see 2 nodes that pop up in the middle of the text. Okay. One, let's talk about edit text spacing. So as I put my mouse cursor between 2 letters, you'll see these letters V and A pop up with 2 black arrows pointing inward. Meaning if I were to left click, those lines would move inward. Now if I hold my shift key, you'll see those arrows change directions, meaning if I left click my mouse now, it will push them apart, whatever direction those arrows are changing. So spacing my letters, or spacing my lines. If I had multiple lines, I could space my lines apart and together as well. But when I'm using this tool, one of the things I'm focusing on for this particular part is these green nodes. This upper node will allow me to curve this text up to 180 degrees down to 0. Okay, up to 180 degrees down to 0. The bottom curve will allow me to go downward 180 degrees to 0. You know? Okay, and so I want to give this a little bit of a curve, not much. Now when you curve this, and let's move this over here just for a second, just so I can show you. When you curve this, now you'll see these red and blue nodes on the corner. The red nodes mean that I am rotating my design around a particular pivot point. Okay, the red nodes allow me to rotate around a particular pivot point. The blue nodes allows me to take my text and wrap it around even tighter. So if I take my text and bring it down, I can wrap it around. Let me bring it down. And I can really stretch that sucker out, you know, like I'm flexing a bar, you know, like I'm just, you know, like I'm bending a steel rod in half. So I can play with that that wrap, basically. Let's call it a wrap, and I can wrap those letters all the way around till they touch each other and stuff. So the just letting you go. Now, the one thing I don't like is I don't like the font for the top text. For the straight bottom text, that's good. But, and I might not like that all in capital letters. I don't know. But let's go back in here. And now, since it's a single text block, I can go back into my text tool and I can edit that individual line by itself now. That I broke it up into a text block. And I'm going to change this. I'm going to go something a little, you know, not everything has to be the same. Oh, you know what would actually be cool? This is cast acrylic. Okay, no, I'm changing the whole game on the text. I'm going to mark it. Where's my M's? Where's my M's? Right. M-A. Machine Gothic. Oh no, tell me my marketing tools. Hold on a second. It is. That's on my laptop for my training. Oh, my marketing font. Okay. Anyway, the marketing font would have been a cool font to carve in here. All right. So let's just grab something. I want something. It's got a little bit of a cool little shape and style to it. Not something too. Nope. No script. Script doesn't look good. Give me a second. Font choices are very important. There we go. Alright. Now that makes me want to change yeah, I'm going to change my bottom font to that too. So that was, what was that called? That was called Statico. I want that to be, gotta give it kind of that, you know, horror, Halloween, not Halloween, what's that? What, friggin' Fright Night look. I'm going to stretch this out. And again, I'm going to edit my text spacing and curve and give it just a little bit of a curve. Bring it down a bit. Alright. I don't know. Now y'all might think that looks stupid, but either way, that's what I'm going with. Alright, now. So, with this, when we create designs, bringing in images, finding your images, Google search, you know, great thing to do. Get the image you want, bring it in and trace it. Your trace bitmap, you can do a color or black and white trace. You know, lay out your text. Fonts, just real quick for those of you that are new, you know, the Vectric software will recognize any font that's installed on your computer. Okay, so a good source for fonts that you can use commercially and personally is www.dafont.com, dafont.com. All right, and all of these sources will be linked in the bottom of the video, so don't worry about that. All of these sources will be linked in the bottom of the video with a link right to the products, you know, the products that I commonly use. But here we can find some really cool, you know, fonts and choices and everything. So like, imagine if I was doing that wolf as a werewolf or something or what have you, I could go into horror, you know, and I could find some very cool fonts, you know, that, you know, I want. And let's say if I type in that, you know, my saying is going to be howl at the moon, and I don't have to do all capitals, but you know, but I can type that in here, and I can actually, I'm going to click on more options and choose 100% free, and I'm going to hit submit, and now I can actually see the font with what I'm going to say to see if I want to choose anything, you know, with what I'm actually going to type, if it was a person's name, if it was anything like that. Really, really cool website. Now, you download the font. It downloads as a zip file. You extract that zip file and install that font on your computer, and the next time you open, or you can save your project and close it, but when you open your Vectric software, reopen it, that font will be in your fonts list. Okay? It'll be in your fonts list. Alright, so we've got our design here. Now, I have to remember when it comes to the design that this piece of acrylic is going to be sitting inside of a wood base, you know, with the LED light and everything. And if you ask me on the hanging sign how I would LED light that sign and everything, it would have some type of small little frame around it, or maybe just on the bottom a nice decorative wood frame that will mount to the bottom of it with an LED strip on it. And I'll kind of create a 3D rendering and show you that sample and all. But on this sign here, it's going to be a tabletop sign. It's got to sit on the table, so I need to kind of resize a couple things and move some things around. So let's go back into my selection tool, and I'm going to just take this guy here, and I'm just going to bring him down a little bit, holding my shift key, and I'm going to bump him up and bump this up. I just need to leave enough clearance for when this is sitting in my wood slot here. My slots tend to be 3/8 of an inch deep. You can go less, 1/4 inch, you know, whatever you want, but I tend to go 3/8 of an inch deep because, and even sometimes a little more, but remember it's sitting on top of the LED lights that are in the bottom of that pocket that you're going to be cutting out. So let's say that LED light is an 1/8 inch thick, you know, that light strip, then I'm only sitting into my wood by 1/4 of an inch, which is enough to support it, but I don't want it to be wobbly, you know what I mean? So even if we come in and go, you know, a 1/2 inch, knowing that I'm going to be sitting on top of my LED strip, all I want to make sure of is if I'm going to sit down into my wood a 1/2 inch, that my design is not going to get, you know, taken away from in any way whatsoever. And so I'll bump this up a little bit, and so I'll be, you know, I'll be good. Now on my acrylic, because this is I'm kind of going with a horror theme here evidently, or something, or kind of a badass, you know, excuse my French, you know, theme, like Howl at the Moon, you know, we're gonna party and drink all night, whatever you want to call it. I want to kind of give a little bit of a profile cut, kind of a fractal profile cut up here at the top, and just so it's not so square in a sense and stuff. But let's go in and take this design first, and let's mirror it, because remember we're cutting on the back of the acrylic. With this, I'm not creating a mirror copy. I'm going to flip it about job center, and I'm going to flip it horizontal. I'm just going to, you know, mirror it, flip it. Okay, so that's done. Now I can go ahead and focus on my profile. So I'm basically going to go from here to here with an arc tool and create that arc. And I'm going to go into node editing on this arc, and when you right click on your line, you can insert points, you can cut your vectors, you can turn that line to a Bezier curve, you can do whatever. Insert a point, there's shortcut codes, the letter I. So if I come in here and I'm putting there, I can hit the letter I on my keyboard everywhere that I want to put a node or a point in. And I'm just going to grab some random points here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of create a bit of a, you know, some kind of fractal design. I don't know, whatever the case may be. Doesn't have to be perfect. And these straight lines, I'm going to go through and convert them and change them to a line. You know, I'm just gonna, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just playing around. Let's grab, pull this in. And I want it to look uniform. So as soon as I find my little pattern here, I don't know. All right. I don't know. My mind's going blank as far as creativity goes. All right. So now I'm actually going to cut the vector right here. I'm going to cut it in the center because I'm going to come over and take this part and delete it. And I'm going to take this part here and I'm going to mirror that to the other side. So I'm going to create a mirror copy and I'm going to flip that horizontal. All right. And that way, you know, it'll just kind of profile out. I want to keep. Do I want to do something? I don't know. Node editing. I'm going to turn this to an arc. I'm going to mirror that to the other side. And then I'm going to use my scissor tools and I'm going to trim that up. And let's say that that was my border, you know, just something, just playing around. It's nothing to howl at the moon at or to go home tell stories about. But so now all of this is you know, grouped together, and it's good. It's an open vector, but I'm using a profile cut for that. I've got plenty of room here for my bit. But I want to make sure I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill or a 3/16 inch end mill to cut this out. I like the 3/16 in here. So I do want to make sure that I use the fillet tool on some of these corners and I put at least in that 0.1875 divided by 2 equals. So I at least want to throw a radius on here where my bit's going to be cutting a radius anyway. So I might as well not let it fight too much. On these inside corners. Do that outside corner. All right, so there's my design. Yeah. All right, let's create the toolpath. We make sure mirror your design. Now, when it comes to the toolpath on a V-carve, okay, V-carving in cast acrylic, 0.2, maximum cut depth, 0.2. So set that flat depth for 0.2. Oh, that's what I set it for 0.2. That's my maximum flat depth. I'm going to use a 60-degree V-bit. I'm not going to use a clearance tool. I want that V-bit to carve the whole thing because that's going to give me a nice pyramid pattern in here and stuff when it cuts. And so 0.2, and then I'm going to call this moon. I'll let the moon 60 DEGV bit. All right. So I just created, you know, some kind of funky pattern for the profile cut and all that stuff. So it's not, I mean, you don't have to do that. Of course, it can be square and everything. I'm just kind of trying to be a little bit different. We're going to calculate this toolpath. We're going to preview. You see all these blue areas in here. You know, when it gets down those areas, that V-bit's going to be scratching up and giving us a nice frosty area. We're going to get some really good light refraction in these accent areas on this wolf. And so if we preview that toolpath, you know, we're going to have some really cool effects with these wiggly lines and the letters and everything in this flat area here. So this would actually look pretty sharp as an LED. Now let's go ahead and create that profile cut. Cut our profile out. Profile cut. Cutting through a depth of 0.354. I'm going to use my 3/16 inch end mill. And everything's going to be the same as the last cut, the last sign. Going to be on the outside of the cut, and we're going to, this is going to be a profile. All right, just give it a name, and this should be Howl at the Moon. Hate 'em. Hate 'em. All right, calculate. That should be a t-shirt. I'm part of the Hate 'em group. All right, let's preview that out. All right. So now, just for preview purposes, we're gonna I'm going to create another layer, and I'm gonna make a copy of this on a new layer, and just gonna call this preview vectors, and I'm gonna change it to red. Red meaning stop. Don't use this for anything else other than preview. I can shut off layer 1 and keep my preview layer up, and now I can mirror this back. You know, I can come over here and mirror this. By the way, just so you know, in transform mode, the H key is horizontal, right? I'm clicking the H key, and the V key is vertical. Okay, with the shift key, you know, in the V, is it the shift or the control? I think it's the control. Control V is making a copy, you know, vertical or horizontal, you know, so, and I'm going to undo that. But so just remember, when you're in transform mode, H for horizontal mirror, V for vertical, if you're mirroring. And with this, I'm going to just create a simple V-carve toolpath, flat depth of 0.2. This is going to be just preview only. Just so I can sit there and preview those two toolpaths. I previewed them all. Let's try that again. I want this one and this one. Preview the wrong one. All right. Now with your cast acrylic, you know, holding down, if I'm cutting this profile out and everything, and that looks goofy with that border, you know, but anyway, you get the idea. With the cast acrylic and everything, thinking I might do a different border. With the cast acrylic, you want to, as far as clamping, you can use your clamps that hold down to the table and everything, but if you're going to be doing a profile cut of sorts, you know, you won't be able to have clamps in the way, so your hot glue is not a good option unless you keep the paper on. But the two-sided tape, the blue painter's tape with the CA glue, you know, is actually a good option for this. It's thin and everything. You know, double-sided tape, you know, all that. And by the way, you do leave the protective coating on when you're carving. I recommend it. Leave it on when you're carving. But I just made a quick change in my head, and let me go back to my layer 1 here. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to change Howl at the Moon. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to put my wolf up here. And I'm going to actually offset this wolf outward by 1 inch. I want to offset outward 1 inch, and let me see what that looks like. I want to select new. 1 inch is too much. Bear with me a second. Turn that off. Let's see here. 0.375. Oops. Select a vector. All right. Now, I'm going to cut that all away. Yeah. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to create just two nice from this point here and then from this point here and then with my scissor tools I'm going to trim away that bad boy right there, and now I'm going to recalculate these tool paths. So calculate, reset that preview, calculate, and then for my preview purposes only, let me delete this real quick. Bear with me a second. Delete. There you go. And I'm going to make a copy to new layer, preview vectors. And that way I can mirror this guy back to normal and create that tool path as well. Oops. Forgot to have the text in there. Put the text in. All right. I should. It doesn't matter. Let's preview that. Yeah. Preview that visible path. So basically I'm going to just create a different something that looks a little bit more uniform, and I may not have wanted to cut his head off up there. I should have had that vector on the so it's a little more round instead of flat. Hold on a second now, dadgummit. Bear with me a second. This guy's right here. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go into node editing mode. I'm going to cut that vector right here. I'm going to cut it right here on the corner here. I'm going to take this guy right here and down a little bit. I'm going to extend. I'm using a lot of tools here, guys. The extend tool under edit objects. I'm going to extend this line here. If I can get it to extend for me. To this line. Okay. I'm going to extend this line. I'm going to click on the end here and extend it to this line. Now I can take my scissor tool, my trim tool, and I can trim away this vector. Alright, and with that, move it back to layer 1 because I accidentally had the wrong layer selected. Don't ever do that. Make sure the layer you're working in is active. And with this now, I can come in and calculate this. Oh, there's still I gotta group it together. I got an open vector somewhere. No, I don't. It is an open vector. I was in the wrong toolpath. Alright, calculate this toolpath, and for the last time, am I on the outside of the cut? Yeah. You know, and that might be my LED sign. Yes, there you go. See there, Dennis has got it. You know, the border should be a moon shape. You know, should be the shape of a moon, round. Howl at the moon. Use it to do what you. Yes, exactly. Man, if I would have looked over about 20 minutes ago, Dennis, I'd have probably known that. What is the best setting for the 2.25 end mill to profile cut? Up or down cut best? I tend to use the straight bit when I'm cutting cast acrylic versus an upcut or a down cut spiral because I don't want to pull chips up and I don't want to push chips down. I tend to use a straight bit TAD for cutting my acrylics. But if you're going to, the best would be an upcut spiral to get those shavings out of the cut. Upcut spiral. And for your settings, you want to be with your end mill, 1/4 inch end mill, about 1/8 of an inch cut or even a 1/16 of an inch past depth. 33.3 step over, and then or 40, you know, somewhere within those two. And then we'll go with a feed rate of 50 to 55 and a plunge rate of 15 to 20. So either one of those two. And all right, it's 9:35. You guys have any questions? While you ask your questions, I'm going to move this vector to another layer and call this just an offset border, and I'm going to turn that layer off because I like Dennis's idea about the moon. So in my layer 1 with it active, I'm going to come in here and let's see here. It's not a big enough piece for the size moon that I'm wanting to create. If I was going to do a moon, I'd have to make him smaller. Or move him just a little bit over. Offset, let me take real quick, bear with me, we're gonna I'm going to offset him outward. I use the select new, that way I can turn off the border I want, delete all the crap that I don't. Select new when you're doing an offset, so that way it selects the new vectors it draws. That way you can manipulate them quickly without having to try to find them. And so with that, my scissor tool, I'm going to trim away this line here. I'm going to trim away this line here. I've got all of this stuff over his head. And for this, now let's go with I don't know. Let's trim away that. Like almost like he's over a mountain peak. This one should not be a straight line. This should be a arc. Give it just a little bit of a curve. There we go. And then with that, Howl at the Moon. Maybe this doesn't look good curved. Let's bend that back down. And that was that curve and edit tool. I just bent it back down. It only lets me go straight, so it's just straight down. And let's something like this. Now I want to come in here, and I really just want to kind of come in here and create, oops, delete that. I'm just creating some small little, that's a big one. I'm going to come in and resize these in a minute. Creating some little craters. It's going to be a moon. And I could probably go all over this thing and do this, you know, a million different ways. And I can just, if I take and go into transform mode, hold down my control key, I can drag up a copy of these. And now I can rotate them around to randomize them a bit. Oops. Let's jump and jack flash that one right back there. Control key. I think you get it. You get it. You get it. All right. Anyhow, let's create that. So these here, these little guys right here, I'm going to do them as a V-carve cut as well. They're going to be a V-carve cut as well. With a flat depth because I want to really scratch in, but I do want those angled walls in there. It really looks nice rather than just a straight pocket cut. So I'm going to use my V-bit to 0.2 and calculate those. Reset that preview. I'm going to grab this new border. We're almost done. As soon as I calculate this, we're going to wrap it up and call it a night. All right, and we're going to take old Wolfie here and the text. Recalculate that. All right, let's preview those 3 toolpaths. See how we did. Probably needs a few more little craters on the moon, a little bit more random instead of maybe not so straight circles, you know, do some node editing, but you get it, you get it, you got it. Yeah, that looked pretty sharp. Put some LED lights on that, and yeah. I'll clean up this moon, make it look a little more moony, a little more moonish. I'll clean up this design and everything, and I'll save this for you guys too. And I'll make sure I provide you the files for it and everything. But the craters need to be a little bit more cratery looking. And this is just on the fly, but hopefully that works for you. And I want to thank you. This is let's ask before I say thank you and good night. You have any questions? If you do, please type them out to me. We're gonna we'll get a few questions in. You have any questions? All right, because I think you guys get it, right? You kind of get it, you know, randomizing it. All right. Well, be sure to give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Give me a thumbs down if you don't, you know. And we'll have another class on Thursday night. Not sure what it's going to be on yet, but thank you for joining us tonight. And happy carving, guys. All right. Until next time, I'll see you soon.